I'll start with one then. Simon, how do you find the balance between being their workforce and the work fun? How do you find it? People have to take their job seriously, but they also have to have the fun. So probably the question for both of you, how do you get that balance between let's focus on the work, get things done, but let's also enjoy and be relaxed? And
it is important to have a balance, and I think sometimes it's hard to get exactly the right balance. But in hospitality, you know, there's a pretty rigid framework around what employees can do, what they can't do. Just standard of dress and grooming and things like that, hugely important for everybody in the business, whether they are customer facing or not. So there's a clear structure and there's clear boundaries. And of course, out in the public areas, front of house, there are just certain things that you're not allowed to do and you shouldn't do. You know, you can't stand around chatting and joking and, you know, hijinks and things like that. So there is structure, there are rules, and I think if you've got a professional and cultured work environment, the employees pretty much get that. They pretty much get that even behind the scenes there's a time and place to be working or to be playing. But I think fundamentally what's more important is knowing that even though you go there to work and you're required to work and you're paid to work, it doesn't mean that everything has to be, you know, so straight-laced that you can't just have a bit of a laugh and a smile. Sounds like my voice is going. Back to you.
Yeah, and just kind of adding on to that as well is, yeah, it's coming back to the slide Simon mentioned on personality. You know, when we actually create the true essence of personality based on the values and how the organization is supported by its culture, then I think fun is a natural element. It doesn't need to be forced. As coming back to that slide, whether the race car drivers or artists, it's really beginning to tap into what is fun within that organization so that we can find that correct balance between the work ethic, but also supported by a much more natural and authentic way of working.
Hi Simon, thanks for that. I'm just fascinated to know how much churn did you get through to get to the layers of creativity with the employees, the hoteliers?
Are you talking about turnover?
Turnover, yeah. So you said you've got you ended up removing a layer of management, but what else was?
Well, I'm not sure I said exactly that, or if I did, I didn't mean to.
My interpretation, probably.
Sorry?
I said probably my interpretation.
Right. Okay. So it's a long and complicated story, and for reasons that will become clear in court in a few weeks' time, I'm not going to go into too much of the technical detail. But you see, what often happens in a hotel environment is that you have professional managers who are paid to do the management, but the employees are paid by the business. In our particular case, the employees were fired by the old operators. And they weren't let go. And even though some of them were veterans who'd been there since day one, which by that point was something over 20 years, they were given, maybe wrong here, I think it was 36 or 48 hours notice. It may have been as short as 24. They were called to a big meeting and said, we've got news, you're fired, effective tomorrow, or something like that. There are different ways of doing it. That wouldn't have been the way I'd have done it if I'd had to do that, but that's what happened. Now, the good news about that was it was our job as the incoming operators to the business to hire people who knew how to run a hotel and happened to live in the area. Luckily, we had a room full of those who were looking for work. So we were able to re-engage most of them, not all of them, because who were we? We didn't have any other hotel businesses in Florida. Frankly, even though hopefully to many of you River Island is a name that you know, in South Florida nobody ever heard of us. And even though we've got businesses in all different parts of the world, we were a bit of an unknown. Actually, a lot of an unknown. Some people just didn't want to take the risk. But those that did it on faith and on trust. And of course, the big invisible layer to all of this the backdrop to this particular story is not only did we have to introduce this culture, but we had to overcome, frankly, shock, fear, and what would you call it? Well, skepticism, frankly. Would you? That's the right way of putting it. So that was part of that particular journey. Now, to come back to the churn, yeah, look, in the early days, it's tough. And the hotel business, certainly in Florida, is very cyclical. Anyone been to Florida? Everyone been to Florida? Okay. Well, there's a great time to go to Florida on vacation, and there's a not so great time. The great time is pretty much any time between roughly November and April, or thereabouts. The summer is pretty wet and miserable. September is the most miserable month of the year. Hurricanes can hit any time between June and December, and frankly, over the years, our hotel has been sideswiped significantly by hurricanes. But what that means is for the Americans who know, they don't go in September. So 1st of July, we operate the hotel. Everybody, we're going to be great employees. It's all going to be wonderful and great for you. Come September, hotel's empty. Not because of anything we did, it's just September. The hotel's always empty. Hoteliers, they've got very short memories. Maybe they're like every other type of professional worker out there. They forget that last September and the September before that and the September before that, all the way back to the time the hotel was built. It was a tough month. They don't remember that at all. What they remember is that you caused this, and so it's something that you have to fight to overcome. So going forward, we've got to do a better job. I think we need to hire a little bit smarter whenever people choose to leave. And I think we need to ensure that we keep good people. But frankly, a population of workers is always going to be dynamic. People are going to retire, they're going to move away. This happens. Some people get promoted to different offices or whatever it is. Always going to be dynamic. The trick is to keep it at a manageable and acceptable level. Trust is a big part of it.
One more question?
Simon, you stress the need to try and give customers what they want. Is it arrogant to believe that you know better under certain circumstances as to what customers need before they've actually realised what they need?
That's a great question, and I think fundamentally you've just got to get into the head of customers or people you think could be your customers. Sure, there are people who can predict, but if you just take our River Island business, which is fundamentally fashion, their job is to predict what customers want before the customers know it. Because what customers know is today's fashion. What the River Island designers and River Island buyers have got to do is know what that is ahead of time, because they're working 6 months ahead. And sometimes they get it spot on, sometimes they miss a little bit. But when they miss a little bit, they've missed by a mile, especially in fashion. And by the way, in fashion, it can turn on a nuance. I mean, let's just suppose that this colour's fashion is the colour of this chair here. If you get it wrong by 5 or 10%, that's not today's fashion. It's a different colour entirely. Then what do you do? That's another lecture, I think.
One more question? There we go.
If I may, even though your presentation will focus on River Island, could I stick on the River Island topic for a moment? Because I very much like what you said with regards to get your organisation to think about what your customers want to buy from you rather than what you should sell to them. But I think, in my opinion, it goes beyond just understand what they want to buy. I also think it stretches to how do they want to buy it. And if you think about River Island as an example, just to share a story with you, because I'd be interested to know what your view is. Recently, my wife had a pretty bad experience trying to buy something from River Island. Not in a bricks and mortar perspective, but online. And it was exactly as you described. We wanted to give your business a lot of money, but we couldn't do it. And we couldn't do it because it wasn't easy enough. And in fact, it was all to do with a problem with Verified by Visa. which potentially is out of your control. But it meant that I couldn't give you my money, and it meant that actually we went somewhere else to give you them, to give someone else
I can
them.
swipe your card this afternoon.
But I think the point of it is that I completely agree with you. We wanted what you had, but we couldn't do it. And so in that scenario, is that point about how you do it, I think that's as important as knowing what
But
it is.
you're absolutely right. And so for this, I actually come back to who's driving the bus. And the reason I say that is because, and of course I don't know specifically about this particular instance, but what I can tell you in River Island's case is that online is growing enormously, as I'm sure it is in all sorts of different businesses. Those would be really unique there. But the reason I say it's all about who's driving the bus is because in an example like that, I'm talking hypothetically because I don't know the particulars of this particular issue. But you see, what can happen is you can sit in a meeting about the development of your online business, and what I'm going to say can apply to any business in any industry. You can sit in a meeting and you can say, right, okay, we need to build our new digital experience. And so the IT guys will go, they'll say something like, well, it's very complicated, but don't worry, we're the experts. Because that's what they do. It's what I call the dark arts, right? It's too complicated for you to know or understand. And it won't actually work the way you want it to work, but we can do it this way. So what you can end up with is an experience that the IT people can deliver, which isn't necessarily the experience that your customer wants. Now, that's not addressing the specifics of what you described, but you can end up with a system in any area of the business that isn't exactly what the customer wants or needs. So who's driving the bus? Well, who is in charge and saying, no, we actually understand the consumer process here. We've spoken to enough people, we'll just figure it out for ourselves, however you want to get there. And we insist that this is how the experience has got to run, despite what the IT dark arts people say. I'm being very unkind to IT, but I have the same views about many other people who call themselves working in the dark arts. But that's the sort of thing that can happen. That accidentally you get a bit of mission creep. That's simply the best way of putting it. Of course, when we're talking about technology, sometimes it falls over and this, that, and that. But this is why you yourself, as an operator of a business, have to constantly buy from your own business. I don't mean complete the transaction, spend thousands of pounds, but you've got to go through the process. Does anyone here operate call centres? I hate call centres. As a consumer, and frankly, I've said to people, and perhaps I'm a bit too blunt sometimes, but frankly, I've said to call centre operators, you know the bit at the beginning where you say, we record our calls for training purposes? I hope you're recording this, because it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, and it's kind of the same thing. So be a consumer, figure out what's actually going on, because then you'll go, why are we even doing this? It's annoying people, or something. Or we're losing money to competitors, that's it. Does that help?
Okay, so thank you very much.